Well, Sam Greene is Professor in Russian Politics at King's College London, and he joins me now from Farnham. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News. Bewildering events taking place on Saturday. Where do you put Russia now, and particularly President Putin?
Well, look, I think this is, still, as you said, a very bewildering situation for everybody involved. I can't imagine that any of the participants, 48 hours ago, imagined that this is where we or they would be, and yet it is where they find themselves. I think that, Prigozhin, on some level, must be reasonably happy given the threat that he was facing of ending up in jail or potentially in a grave to only find himself in exile. There's a lot of uncertainty about what his role will be going forward. I think that Putin is probably reasonably happy that he didn't have to engage in essentially a shooting war on his own territory, which could have been really quite destabilizing, but that also that he's seen off this threat. And yet I think that he will be somewhat nervous about how others in this system will read this situation in which he did not meet a threat head on. He did have to have outside mediation come in to solve a problem that he was otherwise unable to solve on his own.
And that's it, isn't it? A lot of people are now saying that the threat has not entirely gone away. We haven't seen the full fallout from what has taken place.
I think that's probably true. I mean, look, the reality is that Putin has survived this, and I think that from that point of view, he probably deserves some credit for it. But it will have come at a cost, and I think the cost is the questions that people will now be asking themselves about the role that Putin plays. I mean, the Russian elite has always had the kind of conflicts and competitions that we've seen between, albeit with much greater firepower, between somebody like Prigozhin and somebody like Shoigu, the defense minister, as people compete over power, influence, and resources. Putin's role has been to keep that conflict from spiraling out of control and to mediate the consequences. And he has rather spectacularly failed to do so in this circumstance. And I think that will make a lot of people nervous about, the degree to which he really has a grip on politics and competition in Russia going forward in very difficult circumstances.
Well, certainly in the United States, speaking to the CBS program Face the Nation, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has said that it raises profound questions. It shows real cracks. The absolute pain of this for President Putin was that the threat, after all he said about international affairs, came from within.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is often a problem for authoritarian regimes. I think that, Putin has very much tried to use this war as the glue to keep together what, was always going to be a bit of a difficult political project. He has been in power for 23 years. He spent most of those 23 years trying to prevent the emergence of threats. And in fact, he's used Prigozhin as one of the ways in which he does that, both by a force of arms, but also by the things that Prigozhin does on the internet, media influence campaigns, disinformation campaigns, internet trolls, and that sort of thing. But the reality is that in seeing off all of the structural threats that he has to power, he ends up just engineering more as he goes along, because any disagreement that emerges within the system ends up becoming a disagreement with the way that Putin manages.
All right. Professor Sam Greene, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I apologise for interrupting there, but thank you.